Okay,
Um,
super.
all right, well, let's, I think our numbers are sort of plateauing here, so we'll get started. I'd like to call to order the November 4th, 2020 meeting of the Cohasset School Committee. As with all of our meetings, this ordinarily in-person public meeting is taking place virtually. It's being streamed live over Facebook and Cohasset 143 TV. Would all members of the school committee that are present please indicate so on roll call? Attendance, Mrs. Colery,
Present.
Mr. Kearney,
Present.
Mrs. Marr,
Present.
Mrs. St. Ange,
Present.
present, Craig McClellan. So moving to the first item of the agenda is public comment. This section is reserved for points of discussion from members of the public related to, or excuse me, not related to items that are already on the agenda. There is one public comment made tonight by Kara Norton of Mohawk Way. She states that at the last school committee meeting, an additional in-person day was proposed starting December 9th. With the additional day being approved, I would like to see the in-person hybrid schedule modified. At this time, Norwell is running a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Tuesday, Thursday in-person model, with cohorts alternating weekly. From what I've been told, this model is operating with great success. It is advantageous on many levels, including limiting students from being remote for multiple consecutive days, in addition to academics and the social and emotional support for both teachers and peers. Thank you. So again, this is a sort of public comment. So I imagine we can, take things like this into consideration. I'm sure Ms. Norton is welcome to reach out to Dr. Sullivan and any members of the school committee and Dr. Scollins in furtherance of this discussion. But at this point, this is public comment and a time for the public to just assert points, and that is what Mrs. Norton is doing. So discussion of the reentry plan isn't necessarily on the agenda tonight. Obviously, I don't think any of us are prepared to give a response at this point in time. But Ms. Norton, I welcome you to, I invite you, excuse me, to contact any members of the administration or leadership team or the school committee members to further this discussion. And thank you for your participation. One moment, please. There's another public comment from Mr. Erlinson, who is the, as we all know, the Cohasset Teachers Association, the president of the CTA. And he states, with respect, the Cohasset Teachers Association would like to correct the record from the October 28th school committee meeting. During that meeting, the superintendent's quote is saying, from the student, staff, and family data, more in-person instruction is paramount and desired by all. This assumption was used to support the removal of remote Wednesdays in a subsequent vote by the school committee. In the same presentation, staff was asked how valuable those remote Wednesdays are to the hybrid model. 76% found it valuable, while only 4% did not. It is evident from this data that not all the staff support the removal and is a gross misrepresentation of the survey. The CTA conducted a second survey of its members to be more definitive. 89% of the faculty responded that Wednesdays should stay remote. As described last week, remote Wednesdays are highly valued for planning and teaching for more robust student learning. 85% of the staff reported that the removal of remote Wednesdays will negatively affect their ability to collaborate, design, and plan remote learning lessons. As explained last week in our presentation, the consequences of altering the hybrid model midstream are complex and should be deliberated with due diligence. Also stated in the superintendent's presentation was the majority of staff say they are being supported by leadership. Breaking it down by building, central office, and school committee, the results are clearer. Most building principals enjoy broad support and averages in the 88% range. However, 88% of the staff feel unsupported by the superintendent, and 93% feel unsupported by the school committee. So thank you for those comments, Mr. Erlinson. I think that the CTA made their position very clear that they were not in favor of the removal of the remote Wednesdays. I think that that was very apparent from the opportunity to present that we extended to the CTA during that meeting prior to any deliberations. I don't know what the source is of these statistics that Mr. Erlinson cites, but obviously we had conducted our own surveys and that was presented. without any sort of modification to those results by the superintendent in a PowerPoint deck or a slide presentation. And so I don't think that there was any sort of misrepresentation there. It was simply reading the results of the survey. So to the extent that this insinuates that there's any sort of nefarious conduct or malfeasance afoot, I frankly greatly resent that, because I don't think that that's accurate. I don't want anyone to walk away from this meeting thinking that was accurate, but obviously Mr. Erlinson is more than welcome to comment in the public comment section of this meeting as he sees fit. Moving on to the next part of the agenda is the superintendent's report. And with that, I turn it to our superintendent of schools, Dr. Patrick Sullivan. Dr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Chairman McClellan. You know, I won't comment on obviously public comment, but just want to say I remain open to have conversations with anyone that wants to, come forward and talk to me. I'm always here and very open and transparent about that. We're very excited today because we have three amazing educators with us who will be helping us with our strategic plan. And as you know, I know all the school committee knows, and many of those who are watching out there know, we are starting our next strategic plan next year. So this is the final year of our 5-year strategic plan. And we're gearing up and actually have some information out regarding our next strategic plan. So I'm going to turn it over actually to Dr. Scollins, who is spearheading this work for us. Thank you, Dr. Scollins, for all your efforts. And I just want to say how fortunate we are to have the three educators who you're about to meet working with Cohasset Public Schools. Very honored and proud to be in the situation where we have these fine educators leading our strategic plan. So our strategic plan development, I should say. So Dr. Scollins, take it away, and thank you, gentlemen.
Great, thank you. Pretty much set it up. It's all on the tee, so I'm just going to swing and just say, introduce Dr. Scott Borstel. He and his team from TLA are going to be supporting us in this process. So he's going to give an overview and a timeline of what this will look like for us in this school year. So welcome, Dr. Borstel.
Dr. Scollins, thank you. Dr. Sullivan, thank you. To the school committee, we being myself, Ed Lee, and Gary Maestas are pleased to be here with you this evening to begin or to provide you with an overview, a brief overview of what the district improvement planning process or the strategic planning process will look like in the Cohasset Public Schools for this school year in preparation for a strategic plan that you will be implementing in July of 2021. Pat, Dr. Sullivan, if you would just, for some reason, I don't have the share function as a panelist.
I am not sure why that's the case, but I will listen and move accordingly, Dr. Burstoff.
All right, I'll just give you a next at the end of each slide.
You got it, okay.
So thank you for your patience. So we're calling this, the theme is as navigating the course, which goes along with the Cohasset theme of your captain's wheel or your ship's wheel. And what we're going to do, if you go to the next slide, Patrick, I'd like to start by just briefly introducing myself and who Teaching and Learning Alliance is. And then Ed Lee and Dr. Maestas will tell you a little bit about themselves as well. As I said to you, my name is Scott Borstel. I am the Director of Innovations in School Leadership for the Teaching and Learning Alliance. The Teaching and Learning Alliance is a nonprofit organization that's based in Woburn, Massachusetts, and we actually do work across the country. We do national work in a lot of different areas, strategic planning being one of them. We do a lot of work around the teaching, the learning, and the leading, and supporting that work. Our mission as an organization is to enhance and improve the teaching, the learning, and the leading through quality professional development. And I myself have over 35 years of experience in education. I have served as a classroom teacher, as a building leader, as an assistant superintendent in charge of curriculum instruction and assessment. I've also served as a director of curriculum. And most recently, I retired from the Marshfield Public Schools as the superintendent of schools in 2015. I also spent 5 years at Johnson and Wales University in Providence, Rhode Island, where I served as a full-time professor in their doctoral program in educational leadership, actually matriculated there and did my doctoral work at Johnson and Wales. One of the courses that I taught in the doctoral program was called Strategy and Change, that focused on strategic leadership and the strategic planning process. And at that point, Ed, I'll turn it over to you if you want to introduce yourself.
Good evening. Thank you, Scott. I am currently the leadership project manager for TLA. I have also been a public school educator for over 30 plus years. I've been a principal at the K-8 level, the middle school level, as well as the high school level in urban, suburban, and regional settings. Most recently, I retired out of Boston Public Schools as the operational superintendent. And I've had the pleasure to coach both the middle school and high school assistant principals last year for Cohasset.
And we also have with us this evening, Gary Maestas, and Gary he's been retired for a month. And I actually reached out to him before he retired because I've known Gary for a long time and knew that Gary would be a great resource. So Gary, would you like to introduce yourself to the group?
Hi, everyone. It's awesome to be here tonight with you. My name is Gary Maestas. I recently retired from the Plymouth Public Schools, where I was there for 21 years. I started my career in Western Massachusetts as a technology education teacher, and I taught the high school level, Long Meadow High School. I then went to Williams Middle School to start a technology education program there. I then moved on to become an assistant principal in North Brookfield, Massachusetts. Then I wanted to grow up and be a principal and went to Old Rochester Regional, where I was the principal of Old Rochester Regional Junior High School. I then moved to Plymouth and started my 21-year career there, where I was the coordinator of technology, and that's where I met Scott 21 years ago. Was there for about 5 years, became an interim principal, took over a building, South Middle School, for 6 months, became assistant superintendent for 5, and most recently retired as superintendent for 12 years in Plymouth, a little bit more than 12. I announced a year ago in October, and we would have known all would have happened, in March. But here we are, and I'm just grateful to be here and be part of this process with you, and I'm just really excited to bring some great work to in supporting Cohasset.
Thank you, Ed and Gary. So what I love about the fact that we're here with you this evening to kick off this process is that both Teaching and Learning Alliance and I have had a ongoing strong relationship with the Cohasset Public Schools, which I think made us a really good candidate to facilitate this strategic planning process. We have actually provided leadership coaching support in the last 5 years for 7 of your school-based and district leadership. We also have facilitated a 2-day retreat for your leadership team, and then engaged in a year-long process last year, or a year and a half ago, actually, where we identified clear expectations around what good teaching and learning looked like and sounded like. And then using the Learning Walk tool, we set out to inspect what it looked like and sounded like in practice, and provided feedback and engaged in conversations with staff. And I'm so pleased that the leadership team is actually sustaining those walks on their own, because that's what our work is about. Our work is about shaping organizations so that they sustain that work without us. This third piece, and we're now here to do strategic planning with you. And Gary, Ed, and I have been doing strategic planning individually for quite a while. And this is our first time as a team of 3. Ed and I have done this work together before. Gary just finished strategic planning himself in the Plymouth Public Schools, and Ed Lee and I over the last year finished a project in the Woonsocket, Rhode Island Public Schools. But we're very pleased to be doing this work. Our goal is to facilitate the process for the Cohasset Public Schools throughout the year. So we'll give you a very brief overview of what strategic planning is and what the process is going to look like in Cohasset for the upcoming year, and then we'll finish with any questions that you as a committee might have. But essentially, being strategic means deciding what the district must do with kids at its core. Richard Elmore out of Harvard talks about the instructional core, which talks about content, teachers, and students, and the interaction between the three. When we do our strategic planning, all of the actions, all of the data that we look at, all of the initiatives that we will help you identify are based on what's best for students, students at the core and student achievement at the core. It's also a very data-driven process. Both external data and internal data will be collected, analyzed, and synthesized. And that as we make decisions as a team, as you make decisions as a team, we will constantly be grounding you in what the data says to be sure that we're very focused on what the community's needs are as a whole. This quote comes from Rachel Curtis and Elizabeth City, who are disciples of Elmore out of Harvard. And it's in a book they wrote in 2010 called Strategy in Action. And I like this quote because it really defines what being strategic is all about. And it's a set of actions an organization chooses to pursue in order to achieve its objectives. These deliberate actions are puzzle pieces that fit together to create a clear picture of how the people, activities, and resources of the organization can work effectively to accomplish a collective purpose. I love this quote because it talks about intentionality, being deliberate, and it talks about really defining what the actions are as an organization that you value, that you will use as your roadmap around improving practice in the Cohasset Public Schools. We do strategic planning really for five primary reasons. The first being obviously that we're focusing on setting the direction for the teaching, the learning, and the leading, because after all, in the educational setting, that's what we're all about. But strategic planning done effectively also helps the district to develop a common map using common vocabulary and common language. And it becomes at your core what you use to drive decisions and making those decisions. If it's not attached to the plan in some way, the organization has to ask itself if it's the right time to actually make that decision. The plan also drives alignment across the district, both horizontally from elementary to elementary, from staff to staff, but it also drives it vertically from elementary to middle to high school, to central office, to school committee. And then finally, the strategic plan is a way for you to brand your organization, to brand what's important to you as an organization. And it's a way for you to communicate that. And we'll show you at the end of this presentation an example of a plan that we just recently created as a communication tool for the community so that they know exactly what your roadmap looks like and what your key initiatives are. Next slide, Pat. So when you look at building context about the overview, we view this process as a community event. It's a way for all the key stakeholders to be able to vet what's important and build consensus around the expectations for the future of your children in Cohasset. The way this process is designed, it's designed to be inclusive of all stakeholders, both in the organization and in the community. All those folks that are not even necessarily key players, but contribute to the Cohasset Public Schools in some way, will be given the opportunity to provide their voice and their input in developing your strategic plan moving forward. And then that becomes a plan that's commonly owned by all. The Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has developed a strategic planning process that they call Planning for Success. And our process is very similar because the Massachusetts process is a good process. It's a 3-phase process. The first phase is what we're calling building the foundation. And we'll talk you quickly through each of these phases in a moment. The second phase is actually the development of the strategic plan. And the third phase is implementing that plan and doing some work with your team around what that implementation should look like. The subtle difference between the way we facilitate, what we, TLA, facilitate the strategic planning process, that's just subtly different from the planning for success model, is that we tend to do a little bit more of external data collection because we believe that the Cohasset Public Schools represents the entire community and the voice of the entire community is important. So you'll see in the next slide that in this phase one, we do a lot of external data collection as well. So in phase one, which we told you was building the foundation, it's really a multi-step process. And it starts, and we did this in both July and then again in August with your central office leadership team. We really sat down with the team. Our philosophy is this is for you. Our role is to help facilitate a process that works for you in Cohasset. So we don't sell a canned approach. We tailor that approach in an initial needs assessment meeting. We actually did 2 of them with you folks around what are the needs of your community in this planning process. And then we set out with some of the hard work, which is really to begin, and Dr. Scollins has been spearheading this, working with the leadership team. We have begun to collect data, both ex post facto data, which is data that already exists within your organization, whether it be budget data, whether it be student achievement data, whether it be personnel data, any kind of data that you see is important to you as an organization that already exists. We are beginning to work with you to collect that data, and that data will be part of the data that helps drive the process moving forward. But at that same time that this internal ex post facto data is being collected and the external ex post facto data, we will also run a series of forums. We're actually doing 4 forums next week and the week after, in which there are about 60 to 90-minute forums that Dr. Maestas, Mr. Lee, and I will facilitate, and which we're looking for specific feedback from the key stakeholders within your community, municipal, staff, leadership, school committee, students, anyone that you've identified as important stakeholders in providing information. That's the qualitative collection of data. But at the same time, Dr. Maestas will be coordinating the administration of a survey to collect some quantitative data, again, from your key stakeholders. And those 2 pieces of quant and qualitative data, along with the internal and external ex post facto data, will be used in the analysis of the data in phase 2. And if you want to go to phase 2, Pat. In phase 2, this is where a strategic planning committee comes together. And this committee will be identified by you folks as a leadership team. And we try to cap it at right around 20 to make it manageable. And I will say to you that if things should change in the pandemic climate, we are prepared to do this virtually. We actually started the process last year in a community and did a series of forums, and the next week they closed down and went remote for the rest of the year. And we actually did the entire process in phase 2 and phase 3 remotely, and it went very, very well. So we're prepared to do that if at some point you determine that needs to be done, but we'll take your lead on that. In these meetings, it's multi-steps. It's actually a 5-step process. It will be roughly 5 meetings. However, we don't hold it to that. Sometimes it takes longer because the group really gets deeply involved in vetting the data from an analysis and synthesis perspective. So we map it out as 5, but we know that it might take 1 or 2 more than that, and we're prepared to do that if that needs to happen. In the development of the plan, once we've analyzed the data and used it to drive some of our decisions moving forward, we will then look at what your current plan, which was up this year, but has been extended for one more year. So it runs through the 2021 school year. We don't believe in throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You have a very effective plan in place now, and we will use that foundationally in the work that we do in developing the next strategic plan. We'll look at your mission, your core values, your theory of action. We'll look at your strategic initiatives or your pillars, and then we will begin the work of fine-tuning the mission if it's solid now and your core values, and then developing the vision, the strategic objectives, which are your overarching objectives, and then the strategic initiatives along with outcomes as part of that plan. Pat, you can go to the next slide. And then finally, the final step obviously is that the school committee has the final approval. So there'll be a presentation that will take place to the school committee with a draft of the plan. The way we've developed this process is that there's input and feedback all the way along. So there are feedback loops built into this system that allow for the entire strategic planning committee to make adjustments as needed as we're going through the process. That feedback loop is some subcommittee work where some subcommittee of staff, students, leadership, parents can provide feedback along the way. And that feedback gets brought from the subcommittee back to the strategic planning committee. And that feedback is used to adjust and strengthen our work. The third and final phase, and this is a really important phase. We are, as I said to you in the beginning, TLA is a small nonprofit, and we don't take on strategic planning initiatives if the district is doing it because it's compliant, because it's required by the Department of Education. We're looking to work with districts, and we determine that in that very first needs assessment meeting. And you make a commitment to us that this won't become a binder on your shelf, but a dynamic document that is going to help drive your organization. And this third and final phase is really important. We do some work with the strategic planning committee, which is comprised of the entire leadership team, around how can you use this newly developed plan to both horizontally and vertically drive the district. And what I mean by that is, so how does the strategic plan drive the set of goals that the school committee picks every year? How does the strategic plan drive school committee goals that drive district leadership goals, that drive building goals, that drive school improvement plans for your school councils, that actually drive the administrator and teacher goals that are part of the Massachusetts model evaluation system. So we try to provide a connectivity vertically that makes it so that everyone in the organization is framed and focused on the same core values, the same mission, and the same set of strategic objectives and initiatives. That's the process in a nutshell. The timeline, we've already begun the work really in phase one, and phase one should be over by December of 2020. And then after the new year, we will move into the strategic planning committee work from January through probably mid-April, with a draft of the plan ready to go to the school committee in early May of 2021, barring any changes in what's happening. But we believed no later, even if we have to do this in a remote environment, a virtual environment, we believe that we'll be ready to work with you in May to come back to you as a committee and present to you a draft. So Pat, there's a link here that just shows a plan that we recently did. I just wanted to show you what the quality of our work looks like. You have access to this Google slide, so you can go back and look at this at another time. But this was the Woonsocket Education Department in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. And this was the format. They chose building the future as their theme. And they used a building around the foundation being their core value and mission. Their 4 pillars hold the building up. And then their vision that represents looking high is their rooftop of their building.
Scott, I sense a wheel coming potentially for us with some smoke.
I do as well. And instead of pillars, I don't yet. I have to brush up a bit, Dr. Sullivan, as to what those are called in the wheel, in that ship's wheel. Are those spokes?
Spinnakers, or I'm not sure.
But I suspect instead of pillars, your core objectives may end up being the parts of the wheel. Nautical, I'm not. And then Dr. Sullivan, if you want to just quickly scroll through so people
Sure.
see what the layout is. This was the team involved in the work. So it's a summary of the process. And you'll see that their steps were a little bit different. It's highlighted what the steps were. And we have this professionally done from a desktop publisher who will do that for the Cohasset plan as well. This is their mission, their core values. And they had 5 core values. Their vision, which is where their vision statement is where they want to go. Their theory of action. And then underneath that, they had a series, they had their 4 pillars. And then under each pillar, they had strategic objectives, which were their overarching objectives. And then under each strategic objective, they have a set of strategic initiatives and outcomes. Now, what I think might be a little bit different for Cohasset is that these goals, these initiatives and objectives, as you look at them, they're actually developing an action plan that's outside of the strategic planning document for each one of these initiatives. In Cohasset, I think what we'll do is develop them in a smart format and include them right in the document for you so that you're not, one of the wishes that Dr. Sullivan shared with us when we met with him in the needs assessments is that you not have all these multiple plans out there that you have to coordinate, but you try to integrate as much as possible content across plans. So that will be philosophically where we come in the development of the plan. But that's a sample of what the strategic plan might look like.
Great.
At this point, we would be happy, the 3 of us, to entertain any questions that you folks might have.
Thank you very much for that presentation, gentlemen. And again, thank you for being present here tonight. Any members of the school committee have any questions? We can just go around in the regular order. Mrs. Cleary, do you have any questions for any of the individuals that presented?
Don't. Thank you for the presentation. I look forward to participating in the process in whatever way I am able.
Mr. Kearney, do you have any questions?
First of all, I'd like to thank them for coming in. This is exciting. Yeah, this is kind of an outside looking in approach, and I'm with the developments and the skills and the talent. I can't tell you how excited I am. This is great, Dr. Sullivan. I'm glad and happy that you put this together, because this sounds like a really good team to show us how do we move forward. The presentation was very, very impressive, to say the least. And again, I'm excited to work with you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kearney. Mrs. Marr.
No, just like to echo everyone and thank you for the presentation. I will pull out my dictionary of nautical terms and and forward it along, growing up on the water as we all did here. No, but it's great. It's a very energizing process when you start a strategic plan. We're at the end of ours, and I kind of feel like we've been looking at the same document for 5 years. And I understand this is going to be a 3-year plan, which I think it is really smart because it allows adaptability and flexibility, because as we know, things change ever so frequently. So it's exciting, and I look forward to the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Marr. Mrs. St. Ange.
Just thank you to everybody. I think it'll be a great way to get voice from our community, which has been a continued theme of what we're trying to do. The part of a steering wheel on a ship is called a spoke, just like on a bike wheel.
Okay.
Yeah, no, but thank you. That's a lot of effort. It's great to see that final product, to see where we're going, so we can kind of have that backwards design thought process and know what we are reaching for. So thank you all for your work and for the work you will be doing.
Thank you.
Yes, again, thanks very much for the overall blueprint there, gentlemen. And I think we all look forward to this exciting process. I don't have any questions for you at this early juncture, though. But thank you so much.
Chairman McClellan, just want to reiterate the importance of this document and really setting the tone for everything we do. Over the next 3 years, it's the strategic plan really guides the building plans, the school improvement plans, leadership goals, superintendent's goals, of course, and teacher goals. So it really does go, it's like an arrow right through to make sure that everyone is, all of us are aligned in the process of improving our already amazing schools. And I want to thank Dr. Scollins for her work on this. She's really spearheading the coordination of it. So thank you, Dr. Scollins, for your continued work. And I appreciate your work with it too. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here. And we look forward to the next steps in the process, which include the forums, the survey, and as much community involvement as we possibly can have. It's a wonderful school community, and the collective voice that we can gather through our efforts in this is what's going to make our next 3 years very special as we further our initiatives. So thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for this opportunity. We're very much looking forward to the work.
Wonderful. Have a nice night.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Good evening.
Thank you so much. Great. Such good timing too. The way it's all laid itself out around, a relatively new leadership team over the past couple of years. So this is exciting.
It is exciting. Yeah, it's an exciting new frontier for us and to look forward in our next 3 years. And your comments, Ellen, about the 3-year plan being a good idea, I echo them, because I think it's very hard to think 5 years forward, never mind 3 years. I think there's a lot changing in education and our approach, and it's important to, I think a 3-year time period really gives us a good gauge on what we can plan for and successfully move forward with. So thank you for that. Okay, so next I'll turn over to Caroline. Caroline, thank you for being here and for listening patiently through our strategic plan process, but you're going to probably be very involved with it too. And that certainly that Superintendent's Advisory Committee will be. It's a good way for you to have a voice in what happens in the next 3 years. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about how things are going as we're moving into, I think it is our 6th or 7th week of being back in school. And as things get, as things change and progress, maybe let us know a little bit about how things are going, and take it away, Caroline.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So I think I'll just start off by kind of talking about like happenings and things that students have been excited about. I know that in the fall sports that have ran, all the seniors now have been on. I think golf might be the only one left that they still have to do their senior night. I'm not sure if I saw that, but cross country and girls and boys soccer and girls field hockeys all kind of had their own ceremonies over the past few weeks. I know some of them got pushed up because the boosters were all a little bit worried kind of as the season might go on, just because we have seen in the surrounding towns, it's so unfortunate that they have cut their I know Norwell has cut their athletics kind of short because of cases that they have had in Abington's towns like that. So that's obviously very upsetting, and I'm just grateful to have kind of made it this far. And I know we have some like kind of fun tournaments that are coming up that are not usually like how the MIAA would do in the kind of a grand way, because obviously Cohasset and it's like athletic standing is something really that we all kind of take pride in. But there's still plenty of opportunities to kind of round out the fall and for the winter too, kind of keeping some optimism there. As far as like in school, I know clubs like Coach A and the Green Team are still doing great work. There's definitely and having meetings since students eating lunch are way more spread out across, because we do have to spread out and utilizing different areas of the school to eat lunch. It's that more important to kind of keep track and make sure the composting efforts that students have put in throughout the years, like leading up, don't get forgotten about, because obviously that's important. And the way that Coach A has handled it, being very creative between the two cohorts, making sure that everything composting wise gets done between the days that we're there. Obviously, kind of, it's been a lot for like seniors and everything the past week, because I know a lot of November 1st deadlines for college kind of came up, and that was kind of obviously adds a big stress because there hasn't really been any like constants, and obviously college is a big part of everyone's future. So trying to like envision what life will look like, it's obviously hard for a lot of kids just because there's been so much change, and especially now with like obviously all of America is kind of watching the election, and it's students are way more involved because it's really hard not to be, just like with the presence of it in social media and everything. So I know I read Mr. Scott's kind of newsletter, and I appreciated about his kind of thoughts on what was going to happen. And I know we did hold a mock election for the students, so those results will come out tomorrow morning, I believe. So I'll be in school, and I'm sure teachers will spread that through the Google Classrooms and everything, which will be interesting to see. But it was still a nice way, because obviously this only happens 4 years. So I remember my like 8th grade year kind of going through it, and I'm sure 4 years from now I'll look back, and the senior year that I had was obviously crazy. But I do think it's just important to be able to talk about it and learn to be respectful of other students no matter what position or side they take. So I'm sure tomorrow if we have a decision or answer or not, I'm sure it'll still be talked about, because how can you not really talk about it at this point? Another thing that I just wanted to touch upon, that I was kind of like looking at the calendar, kind of looking forward, and there's just a lot of like under November and December, obviously with the holidays, kind of shifting around between what cohorts going on which day, which I think is important, because last Friday we had the professional development day. So it feels like I haven't been in school for a while, because it was just the one day on Thursday that I went, being in cohort B, which obviously kind of adds up, just because I know on Thursday, especially since the classes are, instead of the 90 minutes or the 60 minutes, and you do get to have 5 a day, but it was just kind of like only having that one day a week did add an extra amount of pressure, just because teachers are trying to get what they intended to have for 2 days into one, which I definitely noticed. So I was kind of looking forward to see if that would happen again, but it seems it'll be equitable, which I'm sure, and it's not the biggest concern, but we're kind of just gonna take it as we go. I think just being tentative, and if it comes up that we have to transition to remote again, because obviously no one will know, we can hope for the best, but I do think students can handle whatever we throw, which I think is just one kind of positive that I've always said, that we can just keep going with whatever comes with us in the upcoming weeks and the rest of the year.
Great. Thank you very much, Caroline.
Yeah.
Well, if the committee has any questions for Caroline, it's nice you spoke of the resiliency of the students. We've all seen that, and we appreciate it. And I do believe that, there's a silver lining in this, and one of them is, that your resiliency and your feelings that you can overcome anything that comes your way, which is a big key to succeeding in anything you do in life, is certainly going to be nurtured through this experience. So I'll turn it over to the committee for any questions that you might have for Caroline.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Questions for Caroline?
Talking to me? Yeah. Caroline, thank you for the update. I appreciate it. Do you feel like the students are feeling stressed about the election, or do you feel like people are pretty much taking things in stride? I know you said that you appreciated Mr. Scott's letter.
Yeah, I definitely think it's just kind of like the theme is the overwhelming uncertainty. It's just kind of a recurring thing. I think that there's a lot of outlets, I guess, between like your family and your own house to talk about it. But it obviously can be overwhelming with the media and everything, and it's obviously more of a national issue rather than the school itself. But I know it's just like it's refreshing to have teachers kind of like in my Zoom today, everyone's like, oh, were you watching, and just kind of recognize it, because obviously for everyone it's like a transition that we're going to go into kind of either way. So I know I just, even today, like we was a lot of like makeup work, because the teachers I have like received that the grading, it's not like that it has been taking longer just to put everything asked in, because it is a lot more like assignment based, just because I feel like I'm doing more kind of like short-term quick check-ins, which obviously takes longer. And the teachers, like I know my English teacher was saying, like, as much as I'd love to go grade, I have to kind of prep a lesson plan for the next day and make sure that's all squared away, because that's obviously the priority over grading. So today was, I'd say, what I've heard too is a kind of a catch-up day, which was nice. But back to your question, I definitely think everyone kind of has their own stance. Some kids have been completely involved and keep up with politics and news, which is obviously very time consuming, and others kind of more distant. So I think it just kind of depends, but we're all going through it together, and we all kind of are going to transition with the outcome regardless. So yeah.
I also want to just praise the work of the principals and the staff for their collaboration and making sure that they were prepared to have those conversations. I thought that the messages the principals put out were powerful, and they also working very closely with their staff. I love Principal Mills putting a message in. If anyone watching has middle school students, they all participated in listening to him talk and debrief a bit about the process. Maybe taught them a little bit about the Electoral College and what's happening right now in these really unprecedented times. So it's good that you felt that too, Caroline. So thank you, and thank you, staff and leaders, for that.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Is that all? I guess so. Okay, Mr. Carey, do you have any questions for Caroline?
Well, I just have a quick question or a comment, actually. It's good to see that democracy is alive and well in Cohasset. And I guess also too is that you talked about the clubs, and one of the clubs is you elect a president and a vice president and a secretary and a treasurer. I was interested to see that there was a lot of participation, wouldn't you say, in that field of seeing more kids getting involved in politics?
Yeah, so are you talking about the student council, or how?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Yeah, student council, president, vice president.
So obviously, yeah, and I think student council, like I would say kind of in the previous years of obviously like with homecoming and the pep rally and a lot of stuff were more kind of instrumental in that, but they did do a great job. That's led by Miss Reardon, and kind of making sure like the spirit weeks and days that students in the high school had kind of were fun for everyone, and that kind of took place over October. and the election that was held was done by the student council, kind of put out for the individual Google Classrooms, which obviously I believe would have gotten a response. We'll find out tomorrow the results and the amount of people that voted, which I think everyone's kind of intrigued by, and I'm glad that we did it because it just obviously shows the importance of the democracy we have and how kind of voting has been a big thing. So I'm looking forward to that.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Kearney. Mrs. Marr?
Hi, Caroline. I have a question, only because you mentioned Coach A. Every fall, he does a food drive, which I know coincides with football season, and now football season's in February. Do you know? Or February or March. Do you know if he's going to have another food drive?
Oh, I personally had not thought about that because that usually ties in with like the holiday and kind of Thanksgiving season. I do know he obviously stands out by the front with the truck. So we have a meeting tomorrow, so I'll be sure to ask him about that because I'm sure kids are still gonna want to get involved, and maybe we could do like cohort A versus B, because that's what a lot of like competitions kind of came within that. Even between, I remember last year my history teacher like gave us some bonus points if whatever class brought in the most canned goods. So I'm sure something creative and positive will come out of that. So I'm glad you said that, and now that's on my mind.
Okay, well, great. Thank you. You count on me for a donation for you, for your team, your cohort. Then I just want to comment. You said two things, and I don't want them to go by unnoticed. And I think they resonated with me as an adult, and I hope they resonate with a lot of other adults. You talked about having respectful discourse about the election, and how students are all talking about how to talk to each other respectfully about the current politics and the presidential election. And, you know, as adults, we don't always have that. And I find it remarkable and inspirational that as students, you're figuring that out at your age. And the other thing you commented on is living with the unknown every day, unknown from the political arena, and unknown from the COVID arena, and unknown from the school arena, and how you're adapting and changing and figuring out how to make it work and managing the stress and anxiety that go with it. And again, I think that's a great lesson for a lot of adults, a lot of us, you know, who have the same things that, you know, in our own lives, and find it sometimes a little bit overwhelming. And to know that our students are adapting so well. Again, it's inspirational. It kind of grounds, I'll speak for myself, kind of grounds me, and, you know, makes me say if the kids can get through it, then whatever goes on, we can get through it and make the best of the situation. So thank you very much for those very insightful comments.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Marr. Mrs. St. Ange?
Yeah, no questions. I guess I am also impressed by how you framed things this evening. I'm always impressed by you, Caroline, but just your framing of just understanding and appreciating kind of what's going on in your senior year, the fact that as a community, we've been able to push through the athletic season perhaps further than others. It's just a great perspective, and you're just extremely positive. I also liked your language of this election is just another transition that we're all trying to go through together. And it truly is. And aren't we all just in transition right now? So thank you for your perspective each week. It's really helpful and enlightening for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. St. Ange. Yes, Caroline, always, you know, one of, in my opinion, one of the more important parts of the meeting, and I always look forward to hearing from you. I just did have a question related to your point centered around the Professional Development Day and the loss of that day, and I recognize that you know, you looked into it and saw that it was equitably, you know, distributed throughout the school year in terms of, you know, whether the holidays or professional development days, and so that was taken into consideration. But to that end, I'm wondering if the students have either even heard or have reacted to the school committee's decision to try and add another in-person day starting in early to mid-December. Has there been any sort of a discussion about that at all amongst the student body?
So the day after that was kind of announced, a few teachers did talk about it, and it was kind of like, oh, did you hear that they had talked about the Wednesdays? So it's kind of spreading through, I think, known. I obviously, it's kind of ironic being that I obviously do this, and it was the one that I couldn't, so I wasn't knowledgeable till that day in school. So it's kind of being known. I obviously am not, I don't think I've formulated an opinion on it, because obviously it'll just be kind of another kind of adjustment to like from a routine standpoint that people, because obviously like from the teachers, and seeing what was kind of said early on, I could understand out of like the planning purpose what that Wednesday means, just because it is like a good transition into the 2 days. And in talking with people from the other cohort, my Wednesday night is a lot like their Sunday night, and how they prepare for what they have to do in like school the next 2 days. So I'm not sure like if it would put more pressure on like me if it was Tuesday, that I would have more. I wish I could know more. I obviously kind of will think more about it and provide an answer to you back when I can. Did you have a specific question? Sorry, I was just.
No, I just didn't know if, I mean, your answer is understandable, and in that, you're really, it hasn't been tested in action, so it's probably hard to sort of, predict how it will play out for you. But I was just interested to see if the student body was discussing it all in terms of, this is great that, we'll be in school more, or whether it was more along the lines of like, some sort of burden or something like that. Taking, of course, I'm looking more for the student perspective than, whatever. I'm aware of what the teacher's perspective is, but I was looking more for the student perspective from you. But I mean, I understand that it just happened. So there may not have been I don't know, it was, and the presidential election has been going on. So I don't know if it was like the talk of the town amongst the students, but maybe just sort of keep an ear open, in terms of like what people's position is in the future. And if you hear anything, please feel free to share it with us.
For sure. Yep.
Thanks, Caroline.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you, Caroline. You can certainly hang in for the rest of the superintendent's report if you like, but we really appreciate your insights. Always very important, the most important, really. So thank you.
Thank you.
But it is a school night, so Caroline, please feel free to leave.
Yeah, you can definitely leave. Thank you. So before I move to the next part, Chair McClellan, with your permission, I'd just like Dr. Scollins to give a little update on our professional development that was so impressive this past Friday, and maybe tell a little bit about how it went.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. So on Friday, we had the long-awaited professional development that we had planned in March that we couldn't do. And so it was on cultural proficiency, and we had Dr. Khalees Warnham come, and actually everyone was virtual. No one came to to the public schools, but it was all done virtually. We had 5 other presenters, and it went seamless. I have to thank Dan Kelly for making sure the technology worked. I was up the night before, as you can imagine, worried that the technology wasn't going to work, a storm was going to hit, but everything went out without a hitch. We had, like I said, we had Dr. Khalees Warnham, who extended her work from our time with her in September, before the students started. We had that professional development time. And then she actually did 3 other workshops. We had 4 breakout sessions where we had 5 presenters at each of those. And it ran from licensed social workers to principals to special education professionals. So it ran the gamut, and they were all people that are from the metro area of Boston. Elise Ginscarl pulled them together, and she did an amazing job pulling together a very diverse group of people who could give different views. But the nice thing about it was it all connected to getting to know students, getting to understand who they are, regardless of where they come from, who are they, and really that push around inclusivity, identity. And so the feedback's been positive from the staff. I think, they've been working so hard, and to have a day where, professional development from a whole different, with doing the professional proficiency was, it was a good thing to kind of take their, have something else to do, because this is something they've been asking for. But I also know it was a full day for them, and they Zoomed all day. And so a few commented about that, Zooming for from 8 to 2:30 is a lot. So there's a little break in between, but, kind of gives perspective of what our students might be seeing at the end of the or in feeling at the end of their day. But no, it was really wonderful. Dr. Khalees Warnham is going to come back and do some more work with us. This is something that we're continually going to grow. This is not just kind of a 1, 2, here we go. Move on, because teachers had a lot of questions. They were very open about, things that they learned, what they wanted to know more about, and really taking the time to think about what does it look like in their classroom, what does it look like in their curriculum. So we'll be doing more collaboration as we move on. But it was a really good day. I was really happy with how it went. So.
Thank you, Dr. Scollins. Any questions for Dr. Scollins regarding the professional development? It was a tremendous success, and have to, obviously thank Elisa Gittins-Carl for her work. She was fabulous, and thank you to the entire staff for being so engaged with the presentations. And it's really going to pay off as we move forward and become a more culturally proficient district. It's going to pay off in everything, including, and most importantly, our students. So thank you, Dr. Scollins, for your leadership.
Dr. Scollins, I would assume there was some sort of survey administered to the educators. Do you have results yet on how much they enjoyed it, or how much they learned, or what they thought?
I do. I had, last check, I had 133 responses, which is pretty much everyone. And so the survey set up really a 3-2-1, 3 things that you learned, 2 things, that you want to know more about, and like 1 question. And then also I asked how each presenter did. I just did a quick Likert scale, just to kind of get a sense of how they felt the presenters did. And it was all very positive. And I also got emails from people telling me, how engaging the presenter was, the things that they asked. I mean, because, these are hard discussions, really. One of the things that came up is, implicit bias, and we all have them. Everybody, it's just a matter of recognizing what those are, and how does that impact what you do in your day-to-day interactions with people. So a lot of reflective pieces. So that's some of the work that we're going to continue to do, and kind of self-reflect on our own ways, and our own identity, and our own implicit bias, and then how does that impact what we do for our kids.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, it was great.
Anyone else? Okay, Dr. Sullivan, the PAC presentation.
Yes, I'm going to share my screen. Everybody can see that. So as the committee is aware, we recently, or I should say Sue Owen, our Director of Finance and Operations, and I presented to our advisory and capital regarding the purchasing of portable air cleaners, or PACs. This comes afoot with a strong collaboration with the Class Teachers Association, and really thankful for the town for their support in this initiative. So what we had requested to them, and this is actually my presentation to the advisory and capital, but we respectfully requested additional funding for the acquisition of approximately 170 portable air cleaners for use in various learning spaces throughout the district. The request was really being made in anticipation of the winter months, and in an effort to mitigate any air quality concerns that might be present within the buildings. And it was a very research-based effort at that. Reasoning behind this, and I had shared this information with the school community as well in my newsletter. But in support of the request, the district cited the following considerations: that PACs can simulate a higher air change per hour air changes per hour is essentially just that. It's the amount of how long it takes for fresh air to circulate in and out of a particular building. And there's been some studies from the Chan School and under Harvard about the level of air changes per hour that they feel are optimal for spaces where people occupy. PACs can certainly improve, we'll get into that in just a minute. PACs can improve air quality, and they can be used to reduce airborne contaminants. So even beyond the pandemic scenario, these are going to be very useful and effective for both our staff and our students. And this is again out of some of the research that we cited, working with our CTA as well in gathering this information. But the idea is that the PACs can help supplement the increase, or it can help increase the ventilation, and I should say in this particular case, the air changes per hour. And it's part of an overall approach to make sure that we have proper HVAC and airflow and ventilation within our classrooms. And I know I'm not going to go into the study, but I have provided this for the committee so you could look at what the Harvard School of Public Health has said regarding the use of portable air cleaners to improve air quality and air changes per hour. Again, the idea here is that the recommendations are, and this is with 25 students per 1,000 square feet, that the amount of air changes you have within a particular area, according to the Chan School of Public Health out of Harvard, is 6 is an ideal, 6 air changes per hour. Excellent is 5 to 6, so essentially with 5 every 12 minutes, changing the air in a space. Good is 4 to 5, and the bare minimum is 3 to 4. A low air changes per hour is considered below 3 air changes per hour. We, as I had mentioned, when I presented the information regarding our HVAC system, we had an independent study conducted by Bala Engineering, and the Cohasset learning spaces averaged between 3 and 4 ACH. It should be noted that some of the ACH values were not possible to ascertain due to limitations of some accessibility to air handling units. We did have Bala come back and retest values in certain spaces that were inconclusive, or the system maybe hadn't been turned on or wasn't at its maximum efficiency. And we did look at, it should be noted that we are below that 25 student per 1,000 square foot occupancy. It's 10 to 12. And the airflow reports for the committee, although I had shared these with you earlier, are all available for you on this presentation as well. We identified, again, in collaboration with the CTA, 2 models that would be sufficient for our various spaces. One for learning spaces of 800 square feet, which they're called Medify Air units. They have what's called a HEPA filter, and the filters go up to a H16, but 13 is considered optimal. So these air changes, portable air cleaners have H13 HEPA filters, and you can see for our larger space, there's another unit. Our smaller one is actually over to the right here, and the larger one is over here to the left, and they should be suitable for our needs for all of our learning spaces. And I'm not going to go into the study, but this is the study out of UC Boulder and Harvard that helped us identify the PAC models that we ordered. And these were the pricings of the models. And you can see the source is our CARES grant, our town's CARES grant. And we were successful in having the town agree to provide these models for us, 170 of them at a cost of $77,063. That includes the filters, that go into these units and a replacement of them so that we can have them working optimally for the entire year. These are already ordered and it's anticipated, although we are a little bit at the mercy of the manufacturer. I had hoped it would be a little earlier, but I did find out today that some of it's been delayed. We should be receiving a good amount of the smaller models, if not all, at this point, before Thanksgiving or around that area. And then in early December, we would receive the larger filters, the MA112s. And there's some references for the studies that I referenced in the presentation. So I know that the committee was aware of that, and I wanted to move fairly quickly through it without laboring over the points. But I wondered if the committee had any questions that I might be able to answer.
I do not.
Okay. Well, I'm excited about that. Excited to support the students and staff and make sure that we have the proper air changes and and to help with the air quality is always a good thing as the winter months come about. So it's a good thing for everyone. So that's my presentation on the PACs, Chairman McClellan.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. I know a lot of work went into that, and it was involved input and some requests from the faculty as well there. So
Can I ask one follow-up, and maybe you already said this and I just missed it, because I know you had an outside company come in to test the air change before this. Do we like check it after, once those are in place, to make sure they're doing what they're meant to be doing and getting us into that range that we want to be in?
Yeah,
Or
I mean, I'm
we just
obviously
assume?
I want the best air, the best air flow and air changes we can get. We do believe, and the CTA collaborated in believing that these PACs will provide sufficient air changes in combination with our other factors in our systems that intake air and exhaust air. But yeah, we're always willing to test and to. I think we've sort of proven that this year that we've brought people in when needed, and we've figured a way to provide optimal or as optimal as we can with our current systems air changes with these portable air cleaners. But we would absolutely look to do things better if we can.
Yeah, I'm just checking, want to make sure it's working the way it should, right?
Good question. Thank you.
anyone else? Okay, moving on, Dr. Sullivan, district handbook.
Wonderful. Yeah, so I know the committee was presented with the district handbook. I just want to make sure here I can share my screen. Oh. Well, actually, without even sharing my screen, I know there's some changes. I don't know if you want me to go over them individually. I'd be glad to do so if you want me to, but there's several changes that have happened to the district handbook. But as you can see, in your packet, if you go through, there really nothing novel that we haven't presented already. The strategic plan changes are in there. Changes in names. Any questions on the district handbook changes that they're pretty minimal that we presented to you? Sure, Ellen.
Mrs. Cleary, you have any questions? This was included as part of the packet.
I don't. I just have a really minor clerical thing. It may be that this is like an existing form somewhere else that exists in this way, but on page 86 in the red box where it says take care of myself with the little people on it, the digital citizen thing, it's just an incomplete sentence on the third bullet point that on 87 is a complete sentence. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kearney, you have any questions or comments about the changes to the district handbook?
No, just good job. It looks great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Marr, about the changes summarized in that cover page that you found in your packet?
Yep, I have it. I just want to compliment you on the improvement to the district technology plan page. What had been there before was quite general and lacked specifics, and I think the content update is very good.
Thank you. Yeah, and we look for further improvements now that we have a Lisa Radden in place. Can really devote her energies into that.
Thank you, Mrs. Marr. Mrs. St. Ange, do you have any questions regarding district handbook changes?
I do not.
Thank you. I do not have any questions either regarding those bulleted changes that you highlighted there in the cover sheet. Dr. Sullivan, I appreciate the work and presenting this to the school committee for any discussion they may have had on it. Thank you.
Thank you. And now with, if it's okay, if I move to the next part, which is the special education update.
Please.
Wonderful. So Ms. Sawanka, if you would update the committee on happenings in the student service world.
Happy to. Good evening, everybody. It's nice to be here. I have to say, I was just taking in all of the presentation on the strategic planning, and it just kind of brought me back to my beginning here, because I received such a warm welcome from everyone in Cohasset, both from parents and staff and the school committee and the community. But there was a theme, and the theme was, my goodness, what a year to join us and to start on something in the middle of COVID-19 and all of this going on. But really, on the flip side, how fortunate to kind of jump in and start with everybody on this new development of the strategic plan for our next 3 years. And it's just been very exciting to be able to sit in the meeting with Dr. Borstel and to be able to really work with the leadership team on this so far to date. And I so much look forward to continuing that work. And, there's always a silver lining to things. So we're all in this together, and we're going to be able to do good work together, even in this environment. So that being said, some of the updates in the world of student services. Been working with our CPAC, and our CPAC has decided that we are going to shift our meetings to 2 meetings a month, and they are going to be on alternating Thursdays at 1 o'clock. And that just was confirmed and came through today. They feel like we've done some nice work together, getting to know each other and getting things rolling, and that they're ready to move in this direction. So that's what we are going to be doing. And that is going to come out from the Office of Student Services in an email blast through Aspen to everyone. So we'll make sure everyone knows it, as well as through CPAC communications. So we will be starting that next week on Thursday at 1 o'clock will be our first meeting at that time. We made that move really because we were finding not only did they feel like it was kind of good timing to no longer meet weekly, but twice a month, but also that Wednesdays, at least for the time being, and leading up to that being remote Wednesdays, were a little bit of a challenge for people to meet at that time. So we shifted it to Thursdays to accommodate more people. As far as other stuff goes, working with Sue Owen and kind of working on this year's budget, as well as developing next year's budget. And that's good work that we're doing there. Continuing my walks and work with the different groups that I meet with, both within my department and in the schools, and working collaboratively with principals around that as well. So that's always very exciting to be there, working directly kind of with staff, with the teachers, in the classrooms and seeing students. That's really important to me. And that continuing communication, that I continue to be there and, very open and receiving communication, whether it's through emails or phone calls directly, not just from my team chairs, but from the staff and the teachers and from the families, and always really happy to engage in that. And that's kind of where we are at. If anyone has any questions of me, I'm happy to entertain any.
Thank you, Barbara.
Mrs. Clear, do you have any questions for Mrs. Sriwanka? Mr. Kearney, do you have any questions for Mrs. Sriwanka?
Yes, I love your excitement. We're excited about the strategic plan as well. Yeah, it's something to look forward to. I'm thrilled to know that the CPAC is meeting twice a month, which is fantastic. And I was wondering if there's any way you could send us, if need to be, any kind of summary of some of the needs or some of the concerns that were brought up in CPAC. So we're kind of all in the loop of what was discussed. That would be very, very helpful because
Absolutely, I'd be happy to do that.
yeah, to me, student services is probably one of the most important jobs. And especially with the folk, children that need it the most. And the other question I would ask is, as a facilities, is there anything that are necessary that we need in our facilities that you would see to help serve the children?
I would say at this time, I don't see anything particular in facilities, inherent to kind of the population that I see that would be different from the rest of the general community. I know in our PPE acquisition, we paid a lot of attention to that and did a lot of those things around what some specialized PPE needs might be for our populations.
Right.
But kind of as general building facilities, not anything that's particular.
Oh, good. Okay, great. That's good to know. Okay, so do you have any input from us that you would think that we need to be aware of now, of any issues at all?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Okay. I just want to make sure if you have the opportunity to let us know if we're here to help. So
I appreciate that.
and we appreciate all the hard work you do because it's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kearney. Mrs. Maher, do you have any questions for Mrs. Sriwanka?
Yeah, just a few. And if you don't have the answers right now, you could just shoot us an email. About how many students do we have in special education?
There are around 200,
Okay. And about how many students are out of district?
about 20.
About 20. Okay. So those numbers are pretty consistent where we've been for the last couple of years,
Yes.
which is good. And do you see an increase in requests for testing from parents?
So, that's something that I was kind of anticipating, especially with the pandemic. And certainly we are getting some requests. But I would say that it's the requests that are coming in are not students who were never on our radar.
Okay.
And certainly, families who have been concerned about their students due to, the closure last year, due to the kind of remote learning last year, even due to our hybrid model this year, we've been working, very kind of hand in glove with them around what kinds of things are they seeing, what kinds of things can we put in place, what does special education mean, what do we really need to do, what are they looking for? So it's been a nice collaboration and communication, even though, it's because things are hard, but we recognize that and we want to help.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Maher. Mrs. St. Ange?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Mr. Sriwanka, do you feel that overall in your experience in the recent days that the families are getting the support they need, or are you feeling a lot of requests for additional support are coming in? I mean, how do you feel the overall operations are going in terms of providing support to families that require special services?
Yeah. So I do feel like some additional requests are coming in for support for the students, but I think that this is very timely because we are just at that point at which we are doing that, having those real conversations and meetings around the possibility of some students possibly needing some COVID compensatory services, or looking at students and seeing where they are at in terms of the hybrid learning, remote versus live instruction, and really seeing what students need. We've been able to have meetings and conversations with families where we've been able to put additional accommodations into place, where some students we've actually been able to, and because we've seen the need to supply a little bit more time, and really talk to parents around the data that we have been taking that has been some, really firm data around, are there additional services that are needed because we feel like students maybe had some regression and have not been able to recoup some of those things. So while we are starting to see and field some questions around some concerns and some needs, it's really at a very opportune time, when we too are looking at that and matching that and able to address it.
Okay. Well, thank you. Just give me one moment here. Okay. I had a conversation with a parent the other day, and I was sort of frantically sort of trying to get in touch with them to remind me of what that point was, but I don't think it's necessarily pertinent at this point. But I was interested in what you were just saying, so I appreciate that information. That's good to know. And I echo Mr. Kearney's thoughts in thanking you for all your enthusiasm that you're bringing to this position. I think it's welcomed. So thank you so much, Mrs. Sirwanka. Anything else, Mrs. Sirwanka, before we move on?
I don't believe so.
Okay, moving on with the agenda, we move to the next section, which is the school committee comments and discussion and communication. The first item in that agenda section is the goals. I'm not sure that there's much by way of an update in terms of goals. I've requested that this item remain on the agenda every meeting so that we can not only provide any sort of important updates, but also sort of remind and force ourselves to continue that process with all that we have going on. So I think that we do need to schedule another meeting in the near future. We can obviously do that in email. We don't need to do it here, but I think this is a good reminder, and I'll start that conversation so that we can get that. I think we made a lot of progress last time, and we're nearly there. So moving on, unless anyone else has anything to add relative to goals at this point in time. Okay, next item is new schools committee. This is another item I've asked to be a permanent part of the agenda. I'm continuing in my efforts to try and gain some support to populate the new schools committee. And by leaving this on the agenda, it just gives me an opportunity every single meeting to request anyone to sort of, just spread word to both friend and foe alike that we need some participation in this committee. It's important. It's the only way that we will get new schools, if that's what the committee decides is warranted in the district, but it is a necessary part of that process. So if you have any interest in this, you don't have to have a construction background or anything of that nature. It's purposely comprised of just various individuals from the community, and we'd welcome any sort of interest. You just need to go on to the town website and you can navigate your way through there. I don't have the exact link in front of me, but you navigate your way. It's pretty, if I found it, anyone can probably find it. It's the download the application for a committee position, and it's just a generic application form, and you can just indicate that you're applying for this particular committee and follow the instructions in terms of submission. Does anyone else have anything to add relative to the new schools committee?
I do.
Yes, sir.
Does anybody have a problem with me actually trying to be on the committee? So I would apply to be on the committee, and I guess I just wouldn't vote myself on, or would I have to ask the selectmen to get me on, or because I'm interested in serving on that committee.
That's interesting. I don't know that. I don't know. I don't know that there'd be anything that preventing you from. I think that the school committee has 3 nominations or nominees, and then the town moderator has 3 nominees, and then the select board has 3 nominees. And I feel like they sort of left it in our charge in terms of sort of gathering all the applications at this point. But I would just do it, Mr. Kearney. Just fill out the application at least anyway, just to get it in there, and then I don't know. Let's cross that bridge when we get to it. I don't really have an answer for you, but I don't see why, especially where your term is up, I think, also in May, and who knows what your plans are, even though I've tried to convince you to stick around. I don't know what your plans are in the future, so maybe this is a good way for you to remain tangentially involved, tangentially involved if you decide to.
Well, I just think it's such a great idea. I think it's something that it would be a lot of fun to do. I think it's necessary because we do need a vision for the next 5 to 15 years, what we're going to do. You know, what are our long-term goals? And, you know, I applaud you, Craig, for bringing this up. And it's so important because, and maybe we can lead into, you know, comments. We had a meeting this week at the Facilities and Finance Committee, and we were talking about doing a walkthrough. And I just want to reiterate how important that is, that we can do that, you know, really soon, because some of the concerns that we want to address, that's why we talked about facilities. I think a walkthrough is necessary as soon as possible. I know we have an email being sent out, so if you guys could all go to that, that would be very prudent, because Susan, as you know, we've been able to find out there's things that need to be done, and there's lists out there that the principals put together, and you know, it's kind of a wish list. And I just think that all of us should kind of know what the wish list is, because then we can work from what we need. I mean, this idea that we're asking principals to say, you know, what do you need? And then go back to them and say, you know, what do you really need? You know, that's really, you need what they need, you know, and then we all need to know that. You know, we have $8 million worth of budgetary items in the next 10 years that we need to address. And all we got was 200,000 from the town last year. And we're not getting anything right now because, you know, I guess we're not meeting about that. So we definitely need to get together and address what we're going to need on this budget items. Wouldn't you agree, Dr. Sullivan?
Yes, I think it's a good plan to keep looking forward and to think about what we need, for sure.
Because we're going to be presenting to the town. Susan, do you want to reiterate on that? Like when are we meeting with the town for the capital budgets?
We don't have anything planned right now. I don't think, probably not till after the holidays.
Yeah, Chairman McClellan, I was going to speak more on this topic when we got to reports of the subcommittee, because I see there's another agenda item.
Okay, all right, we can address it then. That'd be great.
Okay, anyone else in the New Schools Committee? All right, moving on to the next item in this agenda section is the review of the policy. It's DJE. It has to do with procurement and the procurement process. Mrs. Colery and Mrs. St. Ange.
Thank you. So thanks to Mrs. Owen, we were made aware of the fact that our bidding requirements were slightly out of date. And she was kind enough to forward some information about the Mass General Law that this policy relates to. Our policy that exists in our handbook says that we need to engage in a bidding process for materials in excess of $25,000, but the mask policy reference manual, I think it's called, the sort of boilerplates that MASC gives districts to guide their policy making, and Mass General Law both actually define that amount as being $50,000. So what we did as a policy subcommittee is elected to forward the mask boilerplate policy along for consideration by the committee. And we would request that we adopt this version of the policy so that we are current with Mass General Law. If anyone has any questions. Procurement is not my area of expertise. However, Mrs. Owen may be kind enough to answer any questions if you have any specific to that process. Mrs. Marr.
Thank you. I just have a question thank you for updating this because it was woefully out of date. So the second line that was inserted in the first paragraph, beginning with all purchases valued between $10,000 and $50,000 shall require the procurement officer to attempt to secure 3 quotes for all materials, equipments, and services. But then the first line of the second paragraph is an effort will be made to procure multiple bids for all purchases in excess of 50,000. So I'm just a little confused. Are quotes and bids different things?
I think the differentiation is that we're meant to engage in a formal request for bid process for things in excess of $50,000. So we're meant to put it out to bid.
Out to bid as opposed to getting a quote.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Thank you.
I guess the one issue I had with it was just in the third paragraph, there's the term suppliers. I just don't know if that's the best, is that the best noun to use? I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter, but it's just, I don't know. Is there always going to be something that giving us supplies, or is contractors a better term, or vendors, or I don't know, just to sort of keep it more general? Or anyone have any suggestions for some sort of different?
I think suppliers is used as suppliers of goods or services. So it reflects both a contractor and an establishment that sells something.
Okay.
My business is a very generic term.
Good. Okay. Anything else? Okay, is there a motion on the floor to approve the revised language as drafted by the policy subcommittee of policy DJE?
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. Marr. Is there a second?
Second, can I second it?
Seconded by Mrs. Colery. All in favor of the current wording as proposed by the policy subcommittee of policy DJE, please indicate so in roll call fashion. Mrs. Colery.
Aye.
Mr. Kearney.
Aye.
Mrs. Marr.
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Aye.
Aye, Craig McClellan. That motion unanimously passes, so that policy language has been approved. Thank you very much for drafting that. Moving on to the next agenda section was the reports from the subcommittees. I know that Mrs. Marr had one. We'll just go around Mrs. Marr in alphabetical order still. And starting with Mrs. Colery, do you have any updates?
So the policy subcommittee met. We're very busy. Our committee is very busy. And we started the process after deciding how we would proceed on policy DJE. We started the process of reviewing the contents of the policy manual. And so thanks to Mrs. Marr, who compiled a very extensive and detailed spreadsheet last year, super helpful. We are in the process of sort of allocating sections to each committee member, which we will cross-reference between the two manuals to see how we'll proceed on each section for the policies that are sort of mismatched. And so we will continue to report back on our progress.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Colery. You have a question, Mrs. Marr?
I just wanted to say, if you wanted to throw me a subsection, I'd be happy to pitch in and look at our policy compared
to. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mrs. Marr.
Anything else? Okay, Mr. Kearney, do you have any updates?
Yeah, okay, now I guess we can talk about the meeting that we had. And it went quite well. And what I'd like to do is to try to see, try to educate us all, because one of my concerns is that next in May, June, it'll be 2 other members that'll be on the committee. And And I feel like it almost needs like a kind of a playbook of like, what to expect and, where we are. And I feel like some of the things have been dropped since the former director of operation was with us. One of the things was, and I thought it was clear that that he put together a policy, and I'll look for it. I gotta find it, of exactly that a walkthrough was going to be done every year, and he specifically, I don't know if it's in with policy or where it went. I think that we all got to kind of communicate that, and I don't know how we can coordinate that, but there's certain dates and times that we need to get our requests in. I also asked if all the members could, see what the principals are asking for, and then we should be at least knowledgeable of what their needs are, so that we can make the pitch to the community. Because if they see that we need, I'll just make reference to the science rooms. We're not available to give any. They're basically not even science rooms, and we just keep either denying and delaying it, or we just don't address it. And it just seems to be, it needs to be more organized. And it's just too much on two people to do. I understand policy is tough too, and I understand that it's evaluations, teachers' contracts, all these other things that we're engaged in. However, when it comes to this committee, I just feel like it's so crucial to the development of our children. We talked about these doors that don't open, or furniture, and all these things that are vital to our students and to our kids. And I feel like there just needs to be, I don't know, if we have a meeting, maybe we can send you the notes to the meeting. I just feel like everybody kind of needs to see what's going on, especially with the budget, $21 million budget, and facility needs that aren't being taken care of. So I just want to throw that out there, that it's important that we do the walkthrough, and that you guys see exactly what these teachers are talking about. And I think we can do a better job as far as getting the teachers what they need. That's just my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kearney. I mean, well, Mrs. Marwell, this is sort of relevant to, you also participated in this as well, did you not?
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Yep.
do you want to, I mean, maybe it is an appropriate time for you to also add your thoughts
Yeah.
about it as well?
Yes. So we went through the list, and Mrs. Owens this afternoon sent to all members the building principal requests or wish list items, as well as some supporting quote information from Ron Menard on a bunch of the items. We discussed how, and Mrs. Owens has already done this, she's emailed Tracy Connors and the town manager select board office to try to organize a walkthrough. Dr. Sullivan's calendar allows for next Thursday afternoon around 4 o'clock to have a building walkthrough. And Paul, we did not, to the best of my knowledge, ever have a policy that there'd be a walkthrough every year. It's a good idea, but it wasn't a written protocol anywhere in any of the documentation that I have. And pursuant to that, Sue and I had some communication this afternoon. She had put a call, Chris Senior had put a call in, Don Pyatt had put a call into her, or they've communicated. I had a conversation with Chris Senior right before our meeting, and he thinks that a walkthrough is a great idea. He recommended that perhaps we reach out to the chair and the liaisons, the school liaisons from Capital Advisory and Select Board. He was a bit concerned having a full presentation. Well, he was first off concerned of great numbers, of more than allowable numbers inside, even with social distancing and masks. So if we limit it to chairs or the liaisons, I know Mary McGoldrick is the liaison from advisory and Brian Host is the liaison from Capital. I don't know who is from the select board. It might be Corey Evans, but I'm not sure. And include the facilities people, Mark Kelly and Nick, also to participate in the walkthrough. He thought that would be fine, and that's basically what we did last year. So instead of trying to coordinate everybody's schedule, we're just picked a date for next week. And the school committee can go, we can post it as a meeting if we wish, or we can just go and do a walkthrough and not deliberate and not have it posted. So it's up to the chair how he'd like to handle that, I guess, maybe depending upon how many of us can attend. Prior to that, I think it's important that we have either a subcommittee of the whole where everyone participates or another school committee meeting to review the lists, because I know Mrs. Owens is getting pressure on prioritizing and to get our list affirmed, into capital budgets. Now, they like to put the pressure on at this point in time, but we know from last year, we didn't make a pitch until January 27th to capital budget, our formal presentation of the items, that we were asking for at that point in time. So we do have a little bit of time to finalize and refine the list and really review all of the requests and put them in priority order. And so if we could do that next week before the walkthrough or after the walkthrough, I think it's important, and it's a whole meeting. I don't think discussing it as part of a regular school committee meeting, we could really devote the time necessary to talk about each item and to talk about the process for everyone's edification. The other thing Chris said, and I seem to recall this, and Mrs. Owen, it might be somewhere in Mr. McMillan's archives, but the facilities department did a complete assessment of all town-owned buildings. And they bought this software package called School Dude. And what it does is it takes a school building. So say they take Osgood, and they assess the roof and when it was built and when it was maintained. And they assess the boiler, when it went in and what service has been done. And it's all logged and dated. It's not a qualitative assessment. It's more of an inventory assessment. And it's what facilities is using as a starting point for really helping them determine their priorities as well. And it's not really in report form, so we can't see a one-page report on each building. It's really by component piece of each building, but it's an important tool for facilities that they use. And just so everyone understands that they're approaching their recommendations, of which they had a few, to Mrs. Owens. They're approaching the recommendations from a data-driven perspective based on life of item, service of item, end of life of item, and replacement needs. So that's kind of where we are. So Thursday at 4, we've penciled in for next week if everybody can be there. And if we can get a subcommittee meeting just for capital process sometime next week, that would be great as well.
Sorry, it was
That's okay.
dropping papers off my desk when I was trying to reach my calendar to talk about. What day was the meeting at 4 p.m. that you mentioned, Mrs. Maher?
So, the walkthrough. So what we would do is we would.
The 12th, is that what we're talking about?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, the 12th.
Okay.
We'd probably begin, Dr. Sullivan at the middle high school. And I think we had a half hour, maybe a half hour, 45 minutes at the middle high school, and then about a half hour at Deer Hill and a little less at Osgood. And we certainly can't walk the whole middle high school, from corner to corner, crevice to crevice, but we can certainly look at the things that have been articulated in the lists and point them out. And I think this process was important because it got the Deer Hill courtyard doors done. It got the tile floor floors done at Deer Hill. So it is worth it.
Okay, well, I think that we can have we just post a subcommittee meeting of the whole. I think that's the best way to do it. We can obviously, I think we already have started the, because I think this is not the first time I'm hearing that. I think I saw an email from you, Mrs. Mara, where you mentioned that or proposed that. So let's, we'll get that conversation going, schedule that on email to your, and then in terms of the walkthrough itself, because you're talking about two separate things, right? We're talking about the walkthrough's already scheduled, and you're talking about scheduling a separate of the whole subcommittee meeting. So we can do that. I don't think that it would be an issue I don't think we need to post the walkthrough. I think we can just obviously refrain from any deliberations, and that's, I think, adequate. It also relieves us of any sort of, open meeting responsibilities there where, how do we do that? If it's an open meeting, then we're walking through the building. So that said, who knows? I will absolutely participate in that. And if I can, if I'm able to do that, I see that I do have something scheduled 4 p.m. that day, but I will try and I will make certainly part of it. But I'm confident. I've walked through the schools a lot in the last few weeks. So I am confident I'm pretty familiar with them, but I will try. And any other member that can, I think that we should. And I agree. I echo Mr. Kearney's comments, and it's an important thing. And as Mrs. Marr just pointed out, it is part of a process that that achieves physical, palpable and physical, tangible change within the buildings. Much needed change. So, and this is separate and aside from any sort of new schools committee considerations that might be coming down the road. Anything on Mrs. Marr or Mr. Kearney's presentation on their update, Mrs. St. Ange?
I'm just curious if there might be another opportunity on top of this. I know I have Deer Hill School Council at 4 and part of the RFP evaluation process at 4:30 that day. So it's just a really busy Thursday. I'd love to be involved at some point. I just know that I cannot do that on Thursday.
Yes. So yes, the answer is yes. We can make that happen for you. Like I said, I have something scheduled too. So maybe even what happens is you and I can participate in something. Obviously, that would need to be posted. That's 2 members. We can figure out a way to do that. I'm sure, Dr. Sullivan, that we can try and coordinate that somehow at a mutually agreeable time.
Or we can change the walkthrough date. It's not set in stone. I just threw that out there, to get this process moving, because it has to get moving. And so we could do it the following week. I know next week is tough because Wednesday's the holiday. It's Veterans Day. No invitations have been sent out, so we can do it. I think the following week would be fine.
Well, the 19th is actually very good for me. I don't know if that works. Ms. St. Ange, is 4 p.m. a good time generally for you? I know you're in the middle of a work day. So
that's after my work day. Miss Owen and I are just in the middle of this whirlwind RFP process, and we happen to meet every Thursday through the beginning of December. So it just happens to align with that.
What about Tuesday, the 17th?
That looks fine on my calendar.
Sure.
Okay with me.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yes, Tuesday the 17th. That actually is better.
Yeah.
So, Mrs. Owens?
No, that's much better. I was trying to figure out how I was going to straddle. I was going to Zoom call on the solar while we were walking.
No, like I said, I threw the date out there just so we get this conversation going, because we've been talking about it and talking about it. So I figured I would just do it. So.
Same time, are you thinking for 4 o'clock?
4 o'clock, it gets everybody out of the buildings.
Great.
So that we don't have any issue.
Yeah.
We do, I thought Mrs. Principal Sullivan was very convincing and in her presentation to us last year. And I think it's impactful to hear the requests from the building principals. So if they could be available,
I will absolutely talk to them. And I think it's also really nice for the folks who will be going through the walkthrough to see the work that was done last year based on their efforts too and their support. It's gonna be really nice for them to see the tile work and everything that was done at Deer Hill, for instance, and they'll see other things that they had input in. It's a great process. So I appreciate Sue and Ellen and Paul getting that going and keeping at it, because certainly there's a lot happening. And it's nice to have you driving this, because it is rewarding because our schools are improving and because of those efforts. So thank you.
Okay, so Tuesday, November 17th at 4 p.m.
Yeah. And I did mention that we had a team meeting this morning, so I did make the principal aware so they could be thinking of what important issues they wanted to point out.
great.
Okay, any other reports? Seeing none, moving on. to the
Wait,
next
no,
item.
I have like,
Sorry, I'm
I have-
sorry.
that's okay.
I did not see you.
I just didn't unmute quick enough. I have a few reports. I've been busy. One thing is the with the RFP evaluation process that Miss Owen and I are both a part of. Today we met because we finished phase 1, which was reading through. There were 9 bids sent in for the request for proposal for the solar arrays in town, and we went through all 9 and rated them as a team. We are now looking at the prices and that kind of rating of the bids and the pricing and a few other pieces of information that will be helpful for decision making are being compiled. And I believe that will be presented to us on November 18th. I think, Ellen, is that what we organized? Yes. So that information will be coming to us as we get a little deeper into the process. It will be presented to this committee. So that has been a very educational process. I also attended the Deer Hill School Council last week on Thursday. Principal Sullivan is doing an amazing job putting together the school improvement plan. You know, she noted that, of course, the timeline is quite different than in years past, but she proposed a draft with 3 goals that we went through for a kind of preliminary read through. Interestingly, it did fall the morning after we voted to add our Wednesday, and it was discussed that that had been a huge hit on morale, and I just thought it was worth bringing up because it was discussed at that meeting. Just noted that teachers are feeling like it's not sustainable. And so I just wanted to share that that was brought up at the meeting. People are feeling overwhelmed by that decision that we voted upon. The other, I think my other thing was policy, and Ms. Colery already covered that.
Any questions for Mrs. St. Ange? Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. St. Ange. Moving on to the next agenda item is the approval of meeting minutes, and we have 2 meeting minutes. Thank you very much, Mrs. St. Ange, for drafting them to approve tonight. The first is the meeting of the August 19th, 2020 meeting of the school committee. Are there any points of discussion relative to these minutes after reviewing them? They're included with your packet.
I just found a missed comma on the first one, so I'll put that on the first page between present and Craig.
All right.
Sarah, I'm gonna move.
Anything else? Okay, so are there any motions on the floor to approve the minutes as drafted for the meeting of the Cohasset School Committee on August 19th, 2020?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Cooney. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Colery. All in favor, please indicate so on roll call. Mrs. Colery,
Aye.
Mr. Kearney,
Aye.
Mrs. Marr,
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Aye.
Aye, Craig McClellan. That motion unanimously passes. Those minutes are approved. The next set of minutes we need to vote on are the August 26th, 2020 meeting of the Cohasset School Committee. Are there any points of discussion relative to these minutes as drafted? Seeing none, is there a motion on the floor to approve the minutes as drafted for the August 26th, 2020 meeting of the Cohasset School Committee?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Kearney. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Colery. All in favor indicate so in roll call. Mrs. Colery,
Aye.
Mr. Kearney,
Aye.
Mrs. Marr,
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Aye.
Aye, Craig McClellan. That motion unanimously passes, and those meeting minutes are also approved. Moving on, I don't think there are any topics that we haven't reasonably anticipated within 48 hours, are there?
There is one.
Dr. Sullivan, yes.
It's a brief one, but would like to get permission for the disposal of some science textbooks.
That's right, yes.
The estimated value under 5,000. Copyright 1987, there's 126 of them. The estimated value is about $50. They're quite decrepit and old, and we'd like the permission to dispose of these particular textbooks.
Okay, any questions or points of discussion at this time?
Just like to note that I used that textbook while here. I
That's
recognize
great.
it.
Okay, that further supports the request.
That's awesome.
Okay, anything else? All right, seeing none, is there a motion on the floor to approve this proposal to dispose of surplus materials as presented by Dr. Sullivan?
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. St. Ange, seconded?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Marr. All in favor indicate so. Roll call. Mrs. Colery, Mr. Kearney,
Aye.
Mrs. Marr,
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Aye.
Aye, Craig McClellan. That motion unanimously passes. Dr. Sullivan, I guess you may dispose of those earth sciences books.
Thank you. Well, would you like to help Ms. St. Ange for posterity's sake?
Maybe I'll take one for
She
my
wants a
home
copy. She wants a
library.
copy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Copy.
No, thank you for letting us attend to that.
Okay, any other topics not reasonably anticipated, Dr. Sullivan?
Absolutely not. Thank you.
I did remember that after you brought it up. I know you did send an email on that. I'm sorry that I
Nope,
neglected to write down the
It was a
agenda.
quick one.
I don't think there's any reason to move in an executive session. Do any members of the school committee feel that there's a reason to move in an executive session this time? Okay, next item is adjourning. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion to adjourn made by Mr. Kearney. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, Lydia beat.
Seconded by Mrs. St. Ange. All in favor, please indicate so in roll call. Mrs. Colery,
Aye.
Mr. Kearney,
Aye.
Mrs. Marr,
Aye.
St. Ange.
Aye.
Aye, Craig McClellan. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Night, everyone.